know what? Doing a solo episode at the Chronicle Podcast is so. Oh, you never know what to expect in the Chronicle Podcast. Wow. Drip and play. They sent us a gift. Wow. Elevate your look, dominate the game. Let's see what they got for us. Our friends at Drip and Play always sending us things. Sorry for interrupting the episode, but we need to inform you that something great is happening here in the city of Calabar. They can send it to you nationwide, so don't worry about how am I gonna get the thing. I love what people have. I love this look. What is this? Let's see what we have. Oh wow, this is something very unique. I like the details. If you're someone that loves something that is unique, this is for you. And I love how they know what I might like. I love this brand. They know what to do. This is incredible. What is this? Okay, this is for my sports people that love sports. The embroidery is it's not even embroidery, like it's done in it. And I know I'm interrupting your episode, but with all I'm trying to say, these are the kind of packages you get. Tell them you are from Hello Media. Samuel Lion sent you the Chronicle Podcast, all the episodes you have here. So Drip and Play, their QR code for their WhatsApp, the QR code for their TikTok is available here. Their numbers are displayed here. Try to get that ready. Please support Drip and Play. Go check them out, and they actually send it to you nationwide. Back to the episode.
Hello, and welcome to the Chronicle Podcast. This is Samuel Lion. I'm excited to bring all new episode here to you, and I'm so excited to be here. It's one of the episodes that, as a creator, I'm always pumped to be on because of this podcast, which expect a feeling great work. I wouldn't have done any more justice than bringing this next guest on, and I'm excited to introduce him to you. So he's a public speaker, an historian, event and CPO specialist, and education specialist. Please make welcome to the Chronicle Podcast for the first time ever, Roberto Nigro. Roberto Nigro, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast. How you
Thank
doing?
you. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for that. That's an excellent intro, by the way. Thank you. So yeah, I'm glad to be on the show, and I look forward to an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, a great conversation. Right, let's just get right into it. One of the key things here on the podcast is all is always me wanting to get into the what, the why, and how things are for the guests that we have in because the profiling podcast. And for the what here, your specialty is basically centered in the Georgian and Regency Britain, an era that the mainstream media often romanticizes. But for me, yeah, I want to know what was the initial thing that drew you to look past the mainstream narratives and just to focus only on the research and overlook the achievements of the. Okay, sorry. I think I need to take that part again. What initially drew you to look past the mainstream narrative and focus your research on the overlooked achievements of minority communities? I believe that was the question I was going on for. Sorry.
Excellent question. I think the answer goes back to more when I first started my undergraduate degree, but also my own passion for history, which goes back even further. I've always had a curiosity to look beyond what's in front of me.
Mhm.
When I was a child, my father used to bring back items from. He used to dig tunnels for railways, and I would look at these items he would bring back, very old, even just some like scrap things like bottles and old things like that. And I used to think, they were from the 19th century, and I thought, wow, where did this come from? Who did this belong to? How did it, why was it in different shapes? Lots of questions, but when it comes to when I started my degree in history, it was very much by chance that I came across this particular research subject, which is now my specialty. We were doing quite a lot of history walks, and I was in the area of Bethnal Green in East London, and I came across a blue plaque which was on top of a house for a boxer called Daniel Mendoza, who was a Jewish boxer, and he wrote his own memoir and became a successful champion. So I thought, okay, this guy seems an interesting character, and he was from his minority as well, as am I. So I kind of have that connection as well, coming from an Italian community, you might say a marginalized community. And after I read his memoir, which I advise anyone to read, it's so funny. It's an entertaining read as well. History aspect to it. Um, I was hooked. From that point onwards. Then, but I started to look more into it, and I started to realize that even the small stories that sometimes are overlooked, what we call history call micro histories, which then
Yeah.
the small story that's not like a famous battle or a famous act of parliament or anything like that that kings and queens and people things like that do. It's more of one person from a marginalized background could change the identity of his community through his active participation, in this case in boxing and sport, because at that time, in the Georgian and Regency era, doesn't matter what minority you came from, you had some very harsh treatment, and they were persecuted, and even just stories that you'd hear, it was a common hobby, a thing to do, just to go beating up people of a different community, and that goes for the Jewish community, members of the black community, Italian community as well. And this guy, through inventing his own style of boxing and becoming a champion and stuff like that, changed the way people looked upon his community. Before, they were deemed as cowards and weak. Because of him, he was able to, after establishing a school as well and a gym, people had second thoughts of doing things like that. And this is what really got me into it, looking more into these stories, as we'll, I guess, approach later with famous black American boxers, Bill Richmond and Tom Wally, very much the same, but a little bit more controversial in the stories as well.
Amazing, amazing, and thank you so much for that. I couldn't help but look at your background, just like mine is also all messy up here because I'm up over here at my godparents, like I said before we joined live. I could see musical instruments behind you and things there, and I couldn't help but want to ask about your family, and I could see you the name Roberto Nigro. You're telling me, oh, from the Italian background, and
Mhm.
I'm just saying all of that. Could you tell us a little bit about your family, your childhood, and everything? And obviously, with the Italians, we know them for food, their pasta, the pasta. We know them for the close family circuit. They are very family oriented. Like they don't take family for like for everybody to the extended line. They take it very personal. They love family and sports is very keen. Like the community aspect, the togetherness. The Italians to me is somewhat sometimes I used to say the Italians are more also like the blacks too because of like the way we are so like family oriented and everything. Could you tell us a little bit about family, childhood and everything? And obviously the music instruments over there. Are you a musician in here?
Yeah, yeah, I'm a musician. That's
Oh
my other
wow.
passion, and that also
That's
closely links to one of my other history subjects and campaigns that I'm currently involved in, which we'll get to later. But I'll answer this question
yeah,
first.
yeah.
So my background, my family, my parents both came from a city called Taranto in Puglia in southern Italy. Best way to figure out where that is Italy shaped like a boot. They
Okay.
came from the heel. So that's where it's a lovely Mediterranean city, and they came here to Peterborough in the UK, and they what the reason that they came over here was largely because of work reasons, and they offered a lot of
Okay.
jobs to the Italian community, particularly in the impoverished south. So it's they came to Peterborough in the 70s, and settled here, which they're already part of a very large community of Italians here in Peterborough. And from that point onwards, I mean, I got a lot of this sort of these stories from my parents and their experienced lives of living in a marginalized community, and what that meant, how they create their own identity. And this is quite a funny thing. They often say about particularly here in the UK, Italian communities here are more Italian than the ones in Italy, because they
Wow.
traditional values that they try to maintain. Uh,
Mm,
yeah. And while in Italy, they're a bit more, I guess, more modern, moved on. You know, they don't keep so much strong traditions, and I think that's very much the case. And yeah, when you talk about food, that's king. That's the everything rolls around the dinner. Your plan, your whole day, visit when it comes to visiting family is planned around
yeah.
the large and many course dinner.
Amazing. That's crazy. You I love the fact that, you've done fascinating, talks like, fighting for status, you pushed in on like the race, the identity, and boxing in the Georgian Britain. And I couldn't help but look at for those two famous black boxers I would really want to discuss today. What did
Mhm.
their presence in the ring represents for the communities outside the ring that piqued your interest?
Well, to answer that question, you have to go
Mm,
back to their upbringing, and I will
okay.
mention their names now: Bill Richmond and Tom Molyneux. Two, both different ages, but one was born in 1763 in Staten Island, New York, into slavery.
Okay. Oh.
Same with Tom Molyneux, born in 1784 in Virginia, also into slavery. And what they, the opportunity boxing gave them, because they were very natural athletes, great fighters, is the opportunity to
Mm,
fight their way out of ownership. They could actually gain freedom if they
mm,
raised enough money through fighting, a vicious sport that it was as well. And they did that. They succeeded in doing that, and then they came to the UK because that was the main the main country for boxing at the time. This is if they want to make a career
okay.
for themselves. This in the UK was the main fulcrum of boxing and a place where they can make the name for themselves and make a career out of it.
Mm,
But one thing stood in their way, and this is their identity, their heritage, them being black, unfortunately. This was their obstacle to overcome when they came here. And this
mm,
story between the two of them becomes the ultimate tale of overcoming that and achieving respect for their community. What happens is Bill Richmond comes over to the UK in 1795 to York, and then he moves to London, which is the centre, the main epicenter of everything that's controlled in what's then called the prize ring. And
okay.
he comes up with a unique style of boxing. Now, this is quite. You'd think this would come modern, like common sense that people would do this, but before Bill Richmond, there was a very much an idea of standing toe to toe with your athlete, punching and taking their blows or blocking their blows. What Bill Richmond does is very ahead of his time. He
Mm,
is fast. He's a mover. He moves out the way, which you'd think is common sense. If someone's going to try and punch you, you're going to move out of the
yeah.
way, right? But
Yeah.
he makes it very much his thing, an art form. He's quick. He's not too heavy, and he could wear people down. And he introduces a new type of boxing to the prize ring, and he has a pretty good career until he meets a man who we'll mention again later, called Tom Cribb. Tom Cribb is a white British man who represents the whole ideology that the British had built up at the time. He was their pride and joy. Golden boy, big guy, strong, fierce, and very difficult to beat because he'd never give up. And unfortunately for Bill Richmond, he loses the fight. And he's bitter about it because he feels cheated. He suggested a controversy of interruption, and it was cheating, basically trying to work the match in his favour in sort of controversial ways, which I'll explain in a moment. But then, after about a year or two later, a great new fighter comes on the scene from the same background, from America, fought his way out of slavery, called Tom Molyneux. This guy is different. He's big, he's strong, proper a real athlete. Not as fast as Bill Richmond, but he can go toe to toe with Tom Cribb if he's trained right. So Bill Richmond starts training Tom Molyneux for this very big fight that was coming in 1810. And the fight is arranged between him, but Tom Molyneux does beat other fighters on his way, and he shows how much of a great fighter he is. He's a force of nature. And so it was only just the two will meet because Tom Cribb at this point is champion. So this is for the championship of the world. Then it's actually, some people have deemed it's the first world championship boxing fight, which happened between a black man from America who fought his way out of slavery and the golden boy of the British nation, Tom Cribb. Now, what ensues is the fight takes part in December. And if you can try and picture this, it's snowing. It's outside because they didn't used to have. They didn't used to do it in like rooms or like arenas back then. It was always outside in a large piece of land. And it's snowing. And what happens is Tom Molyneux takes the fight to Cribb. You know, he displays how strong he is, how much better he is. He's better conditioned. And the crowd, as the rounds go on, start to see this. They start to fear that as a black man fought his way out of slavery, he could become the British champion, and they were not ready for it. And so, unfortunately for Tom Molyneux, the crowd start to take matters into their own hands. They storm the stage just when Tom Molyneux is probably about to finish Tom Cribb off for the fight. And when historians look back at this moment, we come to this conclusion that Britain just wasn't ready to have a black champion, which is very sad for Molyneux and Bill Richmond at the time and for their community.
Yeah.
And what they did was basically storm the stage, the ring that they'd made, and somehow in the whole chaos and confusion that happened, even Tom Molyneux ended up with broken fingers as well. So, yeah, he did. He ended up with broken fingers. We can't confirm how. We don't have the evidence of what exactly happened, but we know he was injured after. And from that point onwards, he fights. They restart the fight. They clear the crowd, but the moment's very much gone. The opportunity is gone. Tom Cribb has regathered his strength, his energy. He was practically, as we said, on the ropes. And what ensues, that poor Tom Molyneux is left to fight injured, and he does well. He goes quite a few more rounds, but he loses the fight. So after this, Bill Richmond and particularly Bill Richmond, his manager at the time, is incensed. He knew that they had the fight won, and that he felt that the British nation at the time was against him. and they just weren't. This is the truth of it is how it feels is that they just weren't ready for a black champion. But the positive that comes out of it and is that no longer they were. This struck fear in a sense that black men could no longer be underestimated. They are not weak. They are not cowards. They
Mm,
achieved Tom Molyneux and Bill Richmond achieved an amount of respect from the British nation. There's someone, yes, not to be feared in a bad way, but they achieved respect as a community that they are not to be bullied, tampered with, and things like that. So it's an
mm,
achievement in itself that these guys, both of them, fought their way out of slavery, came to the
mm,
UK, and made a good name for themselves. Unfortunately, after this fight, they arranged a second one because Bill Richmond and Tom Molyneux believed they were robbed, and they were. um, it happens a year later, but unfortunately, Tom Molyneux didn't train so well for the fight. He was very lured by the temptations, unfortunately, of many boxers at the time, which is drinking and partying.
oh,
And he found himself not in the best condition for the second fight. Tom Cribb was in the best condition of his life for the second fight. So, and Tom Cribb unfortunately won the fight. But for Bill Richmond, at that point, he's he's not very happy with the way Tom Molyneux behaved, and he didn't train properly and things like that. He went on to have a very good career after this. He'd already set up his own boxing gym. He'd set up
mm,
also a few. He'd been landlord of a few pubs as well, successful ones. This is a businessman. And just towards the end of his career, at the coronation of King George, he's invited as a guest of honor. The only, probably one of the only black men there
wow.
to the coronation. And so, and he does, and he attends with a few other boxers as well. But it's quite a success story if you think about it. Only in a short period, fighting
Mm,
away at slavery, and then being invited as a guest of honor at the King George IV's coronation, which is amazing in that sense of the story. So the tale of these two guys is very interesting. There's a lot of ups and downs. Unfortunately, Tom Molyneux, he never he never repicks up his former form in the ring. He ends up touring the UK
yeah.
and Ireland, and unfortunately, he still liked drinking, and his life ended rather
That's
early
fair.
than it should.
You
But
know,
yeah,
I saw that and I was like, I couldn't wait for you, obviously, as an historian, to come give us the breakdown. And I appreciate that because it's in a way where personally, as humans now in 2026, where you're looking at the storyline, the story of this whole thing. You look at the character development and like the before the fight and after the fight. You look at the crowd reaction and everything, because no matter what happened there, I believe there were people in that particular fight that, just like you said, like took this. Oh my goodness, they end to be messed with. Another thing, there's someone that might put someone in that a crowd too, that must have taken some motivation for themselves away that day. And you look at the promotional tactics in terms of like which is still done today, where like in terms of other promotions and like different facets of industries, you see how they try to push some certain thing, and they take down, like they don't, like you don't grow too big for your bridges. It's just all of those
mm.
things where I sit down to look and I'm like, and I really really love the fact that you did do justice for that. Thank you.
It's been worth
Transitioning.
mentioning. I was just saying, I want to
Okay.
add one more thing about that, about the before and after. Now, Bill
Yeah.
Richmond and Tom Molyneux are not they're not the first black boxers in the UK, by the way. The thing is, before them,
Okay.
they were not named. They would be given a nickname, the Black, the Moor,
Oh.
so and things like that. They were not named, after Bill Richmond and Tom Molyneux, they were named, and that just goes to show the change in how they were seen and respected. They hadn't achieved
I mean,
complete equality, of course, but they were viewed in a different way.
obviously, the fight is still on. I mean, the fight is at this point. These were one of the things where I'm like, huh? Because sometimes when you every day you see the news, you see things happening in different parts of the world, and you are like, would this ever end? And I think I'm 26 now, so I now I'm like I don't think anymore. I'm like I should know this now that this is going to be it's a daily fight. It's something that it's like you have to deal with on a daily basis. Like I'm not like at this point, like I'm not sure to ever go away. The goal is not to ignore that is not there. The goal is to understand, okay, how do I like kind of like am I gonna walk around all of this? How am I gonna move around all of this? How am I going to manage myself? Because for years, and sometimes it irks me sometimes when I'm like, you have to still deal with this, and you'll be like, I mean, times have changed and everything, and then I realize I'm like, okay, human beings will always be human beings. Like we learn every day. There are things I'm learning now at 26, and I'm like, wait, I should know this by now. But but you're like, but you're like, well, this looks new to me, but I've always known this. But why did I know? Why didn't I look at it this way? So that's the way I'm just looking at it. I'm like, it's not easy. I'm not like my heart goes out to everybody out there that deals with things, deals with things in different ways. They like deal with different things and all of that. I'm like, oh, it's very hard to navigate all of it by yourself. Like, I still have to deal with all of this, coupled with other things. But the same thing, like there's sometimes like you there's something nothing you can't do. So you just have to like roll with the punches, like the cool kids would say.
Excuse the pun. Yeah, roll with the punches in boxing. Exactly.
All right, so transitioning from physical battles to like to cultural ones, your newest project focuses on the commemoration of blues and
Hmm.
gospel music. All right.
Correct.
So, how did the migration of this music fundamentally change the way, the cultural landscape and identity of the UK? Because, and also, and I'm like, that was why I was so fascinated by seeing, musical instruments around your back. I'm like, because I need to, obviously, it's a podcast, I need to know more. I'm like, so I
Yeah.
don't know how you could do justice to this question.
Well, I'll start with a quote by one of my favorite artists called Muddy Waters, a famous,
Okay.
great, iconic blues musician, and he said the blues had a baby, and it was called rock and roll, and this sentence itself very much sums that up, and you understand the what happened when blues became very popular in the 60s over here in the UK, and
Yeah.
then how it influenced the famous groups that we know today, like the Rolling Stones, artists like Eric Clapton and Led Zeppelin, and people like that. This
Mm-hmm.
my own the topic that I'm researching and part of the campaign for is a special performance. As I said, I focus on these micro histories, these often overlooked events that happen, and then
Yeah.
place them how into a bigger picture. And what happened was very unusual story. An ITV presenter from the UK this great idea of bringing a lot of these famous blues and gospel artists over to the UK.
Okay.
Muddy Waters being one of them, famous gospel singer and great guitarist, Sister Rosetta Tharpe came along as well, Otis Spann, Brownie McGee, all these very good artists. And they brought him over to Manchester for a very unique show. This show wasn't going to be in an arena. It wasn't going to be in a club. It wasn't going to be in. It was going to be in a disused train station. And
Whoa.
yeah, in 1964. So the idea of it was to put these artists on a train from Manchester to Wilbraham Road train station, and they're going to do a show on the platform whilst everyone else on the other side of the tracks can watch and just marvel at this great show, because they made them look like they were dressed as they dressed the whole set up as this old train station from Mississippi in the United States, and it was very unique because you would see Buddy Waters carrying his guitar just like he's a normal passenger waiting for a train, but then he'd start playing and singing, which was immense stuff. And the same for the rest of the rest of the artists that accompanied them. So, but to answer your question more specifically, between the connection between this show and those artists who went on to be rock and roll icons, they said that, I think it was Eric Clapton that said, before this, I'd only seen Muddy Waters or Sister Rosetta on album covers and pictures. But this gave, because this was broadcast as well around the UK on the ITV channel, this gave people a chance to see them live and in person in that sense, and they'd never seen them before. So, and this becomes part of, I guess, an ignition to this idea of what was would then take off to be British blues invasion, which is again across the UK and then back over to America, funny enough. But that would evolve into rock music, the old blues music that they were singing, and then that would turn into famous rock songs that we know today. And it caused a very much a cultural revolution. That this is the interesting part of it, is the journey. You know, if you take blues music and gospel music and spirituals as well, they come from Africa. What I mean is that the influences come from Africa. Sort of like the West African bard music. It's sort of like the phrases that you hear in your traditional blues music. It's normally a sentence repeated twice, and then they round off the chorus. This comes from African music. This went over to America from along with many Africans that did for slavery, unfortunately, and they settled down mostly in the states of the South. There was, of course, ones of the northern states as well, but the primary focus of black people was in the southern states. And in Mississippi, in particular, becomes this focal point for this type of music, blues, gospel, and it emerges out of hardship. Now we enter a debate. Where did it come from here? Whereas the blues people would say, yes, it came from the church. There's people that say it came from the fields, the hard work, and some people would say it was the prison camps. I say it's all three. It's just, to be neutral in that sense. But they do take inspiration from each of the music, really, because there's many different types of blues music. But what then happens is a lot of these blues musicians, and I can talk hours for this. I'll keep it short. There were some of the successful ones want to go to places like Chicago, where they can make more of a name for themselves and more money, and not need to work in fields all day and be treated as nobodies sometimes, And what happens is amplification comes in, and people like Muddy Waters, Leo Walter, and many others are able to start. Okay, maybe we'll start playing our blues music with amplifiers, and we'll plug it in and we'll electrify it. That's just amazing stuff when you listen to it. It's some of the best things, best music you can hear for me. Wow. And so they become big in America, but then one unfortunate thing, nothing lasts forever. Then soul music comes in, and no one wants to listen to blues anymore. So they go to the UK, and then it connects with this whole the blues trend thing. And in 1964, the UK is actually they have more blues fans in the UK than they do America, because in America they would rather listen to soul music at this point.
Okay.
because we reminded of the hardship and the racism.
Mm,
More
mm,
positive in the UK. They love the blues, and it was a white audience in particular that actually preferred to listen to the blues music. And
okay.
it just takes off a big explosion of this music. And then they even say, I mean, when you think about it, Jimi Hendrix, who came around a bit later in the 60s, he started off as a blues musician, but
Mm,
he was liked more in the UK than he was in America because they didn't want to hear his music. And then he comes to the UK and becomes a international superstar
wow.
through playing this music. So overall, it's I like this story in particular because it starts with some of its humble origins with
Mm,
people's history and struggle. But what
yeah.
I'm glad to be part of now is that I'm part of a campaign that we're going to try and raise money for a blue plaque, red plaque to be installed in Manchester where this station once was and
Oh,
commemorate this very important event. And hopefully, I mean, it's going to take some time because these things do with
uh,
when you do applications for councils and things like that.
eh,
But
yeah.
I think it would be um, an amazing thing to achieve, and to for me personally, as a lover of blues music, to actually be behind that sort of campaign. And I'm very glad that I have another company working with me, Black History Walks, who I've
Oh,
also done a bit of work with them, especially with the Bill Richmond and Tom Molyneux thing, and we're working together to make this
mm,
happen.
mm,
And I think, yeah, it'd be amazing to get it done. So I think overall, I mean, I can tell you also a little bit about my own connection personally to this, is because when you look around me, you see the guitars, you see the amplifier, and things like that. It's I'm a
yeah.
blues enthusiast, so I get the chance to bring my passion for history and my passion for music together. And I've been playing music since I was about 11 years old. I've been playing guitar, and I love the blues music just as much as I did then, and I keep playing it.
Well, I think as part of this podcast, you before we finish wrap up this conversation, you are definitely going to play us something small. We're going to need to hear something from you because I would love
Don't
to
ask me
see
to sing though. I won't sing. I'm not singing.
you.
I don't even know if
All
it's
right.
when as in tune, but I won't sing.
Okay. Obviously, I know you talked about the blues and gospel music. How much of that history, was preserved by the community rather than the history books? Because sometimes I just get to look at like how much of it was the ones with the records we know of, and the
Mhm.
ones of the community.
Wow, this this for the answer to this is quite a long story, but I'll try and keep it short.
All right.
Um, okay, so when you think about it, so let's go
Mm,
back to 19. No, let's go even further back. Let's go to the 1920s, America. Okay,
okay.
there's
Mm,
a, the very first discovery of black blues music noted in public record. The famous one is a guy called W.C. Handy, and he went down to a music enthusiast, very good musician himself, and he went to Mississippi to try and discover these forms of music. And the famous myth is he meets another blues musician at a famous train station called Tutwiler, and he hears the blues for the first time. From this point onwards, there is W.C. Handy himself becomes the very first blues artist and releases a song called St. Louis Blues, which went on to be popular all around the world, very first blues song. And from that point onwards, what you get is there is a lot of blues artists in that area because it's the main center. And you get all sorts, famous ones that we know of, Robert Johnson, Son House, one of my particular favorites, Blind Lemon Jefferson, Black Blake, Memphis Slim, oh, so many. But of course, there is a lot that unfortunately there might have been great musicians and artists, never got a recording contract because sometimes the outreach of these people that wanted to record these songs for preservation, which is the famous people like Alan Lomax, who did the Library of Congress recordings, and thank God they did because not only did they reach out to so many blues musicians in rural communities and managed to record them for the out of preservation so we can still hear them today, but there was obviously many that would have been missed as well. But when you think about that particular time in the US with segregation, racism, and even though slavery was in a sense abolished, I say that, it really kind of wasn't. And the amazing thing is what comes out of it is this great music that would go on to shape the world around it for centuries after. And of course, when it comes down to preservation, it's always subjective. If I went down there and said, "Oh, I want to record this guy, and I think he sounds great," that's because I said it. I think he sounds
Yeah.
great, so I'm going to record him.
Yeah.
But another person might not had that opportunity. I mean, this is a good example. There was a very good. You have to really dig deep into the records to and know your subject when it comes to listening to certain artists. Say like, there's one called Louise Johnson, a female pianist, a great blues player and singer. But what goes against her is she's in a world of men, and she didn't get too much opportunity. She did record 2 to 3 songs, but then we don't hear of her again. And this is one of the beauties of actually, in a sense, studying the blues and blues music is because there's so many mysteries. And for people like me, curious, I want to find out more. And it's like, but it's also a challenge, but a bit very exciting as well to actually get involved in these stories and to bring them to life as well. And that's very much what I'm about in terms of when it comes to researching history. I like taking an overlooked story that nobody even thinks about looking into, and then bringing them to life and say, look what this person done. This was so like in terms of Louise Johnson, you could say this was a female at the time, a black female, who was actually making a name for herself. She managed to record quite a few songs, but then nobody knows what happened to her exactly. So it's there, and there's plenty of people like that. And to this day, it gets harder and harder, of course, because
Yeah.
when you talk about knowledge that's passed down, many of the knowledge that was passed down was done orally, not wrote down. Apart from there was the recordings, of course, but there was many that was passed down orally through their relatives, and through the people who went to see them play, and now unfortunately they're no longer with us. These people, so the story hasn't passed down to us, and certain stories, certain lives of that period remain an eternal mystery. So yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, it's one of the things that's very alluring about the subject itself, but also it's also one of the challenges of trying to recover that information that you talk about, how it's passed down, in what form, picture, music,
Yeah.
interviews, books, all those sort of things. So yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things about studying music as a whole, music history as a whole.
Mm. this is one of the things that I do here on the podcast is also in terms of wellness and mental health and all of that. And I was so intrigued, like I said, and I hear you say how you are so interested in when you read things, you want to find out more, you carry out more research. That's what you love, and I couldn't help but want to ask about this. What is the emotional toll of carrying these and all of those heavy stories, and how do you protect your own mental health, mental wellness while doing the work?
Yeah, you have to be a bit disciplined,
Okay.
particularly with myself. But when it comes to my passions, history and music, I could say to myself, "Oh, I'm only going to do about half an hour, maybe just read into something." 4 hours later, I'm still there. So you have to be disciplined
Yeah.
and find balance, with social family life and things like that. But in terms of wellness as well, it's also a good thing because it can be a distraction of what's happening. Music is in particular, and
Mm-hmm.
with research and history as well, it can be very powerful. But music, especially the blues, as they say, it cuts deep. It's
Yeah.
you you connect to it, you associate um, memories of your own life to particular
Mm.
songs, and they mean something, even if the song isn't about what you're going through or anything like that. But
Yeah.
you, that's a connection to a certain aspect, to
Mm.
and they can make you feel better. Even like blues music. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's just about people." Often say it's always negative, and it's always people saying they sing about problems or
Mm.
tragic stories and stuff like that. And that's not true. There's plenty of blues music out there that talks about good times as well. Being part of the community. There's plenty of that. But even if it is talking about like tragedies and stuff like that, it's a very soulful, unique music where you can, especially the more older artists, when you talk about people like Robert Johnson, Son House, Charlie Patton, it's
Mm.
very personal. Listen when you listen to their songs. This is one man with a guitar talking about life as he knows it and he sees it in that moment. Considering what they've gone through, and you build the context of where they come from, what they
Mm.
might have seen, what they might have experienced, and it tells a story. And everyone loves a story, right?
Yeah. That's amazing. And I also wanted to, on the aspect of for we young creatives always going crazy and wanting to be a part of things and wanting to put ourselves out there and branch out and be a part of things. I just wanted to ask you, when you study these marginalized groups from 200 years ago, what parallels do you see in how they fought to be seen and respected?
What parallels? Well,
Yeah.
there's so famous artists often once said, some things change, some things don't change, you know, and when you understand, when you talk about marginalized communities, like I say, I come from one myself.
Yeah.
You understand that you can be depends. Not everyone has a negative experience of it. Some absolutely love it, and they're
Mm.
well treated and welcomed. It depends, and but you can form an experience, a life experience, and it can affect the way you think, how you see yourself, how you see other
Mm.
people, you see your friends, your family, and that experience can be crucial to how you grow up to be as a person.
Okay.
And my own experience, shall we say, it's ups and downs. As a community in Peterborough, people, all the stories that they saw, they've often maybe felt threatened that people there's going to be too many of us, and things like that, and all that sort of stuff. All the rhetoric that you hear about, oh, they're taking our
Mm,
jobs and things like that. I experienced that too,
mm,
and but my father before me, and he it was even worse for him. So his stories are passed down to me. But you learn that not everybody has those views, and as we go forward,
okay.
it always depends where you are, and one person's experience is different to another, and
Mm,
it's kind of a subjective question because how I feel now is we're a lot more better than we once were, in terms of like how we are seen
yeah.
as marginalized groups. But in some respects, as you quite rightly point out, sometimes when you talk about places like Mississippi, there's still a long way to go.
Mm, that's crazy. And with you and your research, have you found evidence of how they found joy, like the people, like like marginalized communities and like people that were trying to, all of the stories that you've been able to be a part of to, go through. Have you found any evidence on how they found joy, peace, or community amidst the struggle? Because in today's society
Mhm.
where everyone's like, you can't be a man on an island, you need to find a community, you need to have people around you, have accountability partners, have people in your corner, who is in your circle, are you creating a circle for yourself? Like we do more that now, and even when you still see the resistance from we humans trying to create something for ourselves. So I want to understand, for you looking at the ancient history, like the history, so like have you found any evidence of how they found joy, peace, or community amidst the struggles then?
Of course, yeah. If we talk about First of all, if we talk about the music, blues and gospel, they the way they found joy and should we say belonging, a sense of being important, to matter to somebody, to matter to a group.
Mm,
Um, if you think about it, when you hear the stories of the American South and how they worked in fields, worked ridiculous hours, lived in very poor homes, that didn't have
mm,
nothing to them apart from their love of their family.
mm,
And but that changed. This is the importance of gospel and the church they had in the community. That was
mm,
different on a Sunday. All week you worked really hard and treated like nobodies. But on
mm,
Sunday, when they come to go into church, as there's records that they said they felt like somebody. They were addressed by their own name. They weren't treated like animals, you know.
okay.
And the
Yeah.
same goes for when they went to have a good time to listen to the blues as well, because they went to these juke houses, as they call them, and they'd go and have a good time. They'd let their hair down and celebrate. But the only two things is these two things contradicted each other because the
Yeah.
people of the church started seeing the blues as the devil's music. Because when you
Okay.
think about it, it started to take people away from that community to go into the Duke houses instead. Because they realized they could have a bit of let their hair down, have a good time, listen to blues music. So they start to contradict each other, but what they do is provide that sense of community, that
Mm,
shared interest among groups, that they can be part of something where they're not so much oppressed.
that's crazy. You know, um, Looking into things, I wanted to ask your because obviously you being an education administrator, and other things you need to do. I know you've been a part of communities and been a part of campaigns. You talked about, raising money, trying to raise money, and all the other things you have to go through. So one of the key things you always have to have in common is money. And here on the podcast, I tend to ask all of my guests this one question, and I'm definitely excited to hear about what you have to say about this. Mr. Roberto Nigro, what have you come to know or learn about money?
Have I come to learn about money? I could
Mm.
easily, I love to just say what many people say. It's not everything. Yeah, I could easily.
The old cliche.
But it does make life easier, right? So for
Yeah.
some people, but money, my personal view on it is that it can it can bring you some things, but when it comes down to my overall thought of it, the most important things in life, it
Mm.
doesn't bring you that. you know, love of community, family, and all the memories that you can have, throughout your life and stuff like that. Yes, money can help, but it only takes you a certain way. The more important
Mm.
things are beyond money. That's my personal view.
Yeah, amazing. And I love the fact that you're helping me in my transition here on the podcast. Now, this one is very personal to me too, and I know for sure for you. And you trying to explain the money aspect to helps me dive in on this. What does legacy mean to you?
Good one. Yeah, as you're asking a historian about legacy. um, legacy. Okay. Well,
Mm.
on a personal level, of
Yeah.
course, when you think, you can be things like family and what you pass on down to maybe your children and things like that. But legacy can also be manifested in different forms.
Okay.
I use a good example going back to history. I can use the story of Bill Richmond and Tom Molyneux, the famous boxers. Bill Richmond's gym, he created what's called a legacy of other black fighters who would go on to be named, who would go on to be respected throughout within the community, and that was because what he'd achieved. So what you get is this legacy that carries forward beyond his own lifetime of
Mm.
fighters that would come out of his gym, and they would live a more not ideal life, but a more appreciated life because of him.
Mm.
So these ideas of legacy can be very different from a personal level, but also from an example such as that, I guess.
Mm. Um, Roberto Negro, what is it like to be you? Because sometimes they say perception is reality, and people would have opinions about you and about your situation and everything. And on this podcast, the Chronicle podcast, one of the key things I really tend to know is get to have a sense of knowledge of the guest. And so for the viewers and listeners of the podcast can get to take away something and be like, I have something to learn. And sometimes you might see me post the clip. I'm like, oh, this guest is coming on, and everybody already have a perception about the guest. So I would always want to get to the core of this. And I think I would really want to know, if for you, what will you tell me is it is like to be you? What is it like to be you on a daily basis? What can we find you doing? Who would you explain Robert Negro is to anybody watching? Roberto Negro, sorry.
That's a good one. Um, well, life as me is quite it's quite interesting, very normal in terms of like family life, children, and so it's I do I have a lot of those responsibilities, and I'm very proud of them. That I get to do that, and I have the opportunity to do so. But also, I have I follow my follows interest that I would say the best way to describe it it's not a negative way, but it's very much a juggling act. When you're trying to have lots of things, music, history, my work, my job, and family life, and things like that. So it's a wonderful confusion of things that I experience every day. But I'm also very proud to do so at the same time.